Okay, here you go. I'm recording you. So you tell me where you were born.
Okay. I was born at home, not in a hospital like today. We lived in a three-decker in a very poor part of Worcester. The first floor was my grandparents, Sarah and Jacob Siegel, and their three daughters. Famous Aunt Rose, the one who always bragged about her children. I would say to my mother, Grandma Siegel, why don't you ever talk about us girls the way Rose talks about her Carl and Sylvia? And my mother would say, I would like somebody else to boast about girls, that she didn't want to. Anyway, up on the third floor was a Christian family, very nice French family. One day, my sister Mimi, who was 2 years younger than I, which would have made her, we moved when I was 7, so Mimi was 5 when we moved, so I guess she was probably 4 years old. Came in from visiting the Burke family and told us that they had given her a white hot dog, which obviously was a sausage. And my mother and dad, I could just see them now with their hands going up in the air because they kept a kosher home.
When you said the 3 aunts were down on the first floor, besides Aunt Rose, who else was there?
Aunt Bessie.
Yeah.
I don't think she was married at the time. And Aunt Ree. Who I don't believe was also married at the time.
And when you were 7, where did you move to?
We moved to Linwood Street. That was the height of the Depression because I was born in 1924, so that would make it 1931. That was the height of the Depression, and my dad wanted to be closer to the little market that he ran on Belmont Street. So we moved to Linwood Street, which was maybe a 10-minute walk away. It broke our hearts because we moved out of the Jewish community, outside of We Girls, of which Dorothy wasn't born yet. There was only one other Jewish family in the school, and it was just a whole change of life.
Did you still keep kosher when you moved to Linwood?
I doubt it very much. That meant driving to Water Street, which was the kosher area, all the butchers and the creameries and the bakeries. It meant driving there and getting a kosher chicken. And my dad, which, as we all know, was fearful of many things, just evidently decided that we could take meat from the store, that would be okay. So we stopped kosher there.
Okay, I'm going to shut this now for a minute.
I have to apologize to anyone who watches this that I haven't had a haircut in 2 months because of... Show me for a minute. Yeah, show Dad.
Yeah?
Neither have I. Yeah. That's because of the virus, and we are so confined to our apartment, but we're managing very well. So going back to our youth, during World War II, We kind of grew up without a lot of things. A lot of the boys went in the service, but before that, it was the custom in those days to have a lot of boyfriends. Unlike today, where you have a steady boyfriend and you're in a so-called relationship. In our day, you had a lot of friends, a lot of boyfriends. You went out one Saturday night with one person and then another Saturday night with somebody else. So that when I met Daddy, my father said to me, "What do you see in this person? He comes to visit you from Boston in his torn jeans late on a Saturday night," not realizing that Daddy had been working very hard for his father and just about dragged in to see me. And my dad would say, "You go out with all these lovely boys. What do you see in this person?" And I said, "Daddy, he's very nice. He treats me like a gentleman should treat a lady, and I feel very comfortable with him." So now, almost 70 years later, we're sitting side by side on the sofa, confined to our home, and I think it's pretty good, almost 70 years.
It's pretty good, absolutely. And Mom, just briefly, when you were growing up, who is your best friend growing up?
If you're talking about girls, my very best friend was a girl named Shirley Levitt, and her parents and our parents were very close friends because in those days of little money, the Jewish people had formed sort of a club called the Workmen's Circle. It had kind of tendencies towards communism, but the people just went there for a good time, inexpensive, and that's where I met Shirley, and she became my very best friend. Coincidentally, all of my girlfriends, almost all of them, were named Shirley. It was about 6 or 7 of them, and all named Shirley.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. I think it was just a popular name in those days.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop it there for a minute.
It was a blind date made with Izzy Silverman, and Izzy knew Daddy from the Boston produce market because Izzy had a fruit store on Water Street, which in those days was a busy, bustling Jewish area with 2 kosher butchers and 2 creameries and 3 bakeries and 2 fruit stores. Anyway, Izzy would go into Boston to the produce market to buy his produce, and that's how he knew Dad. One night I got a call from Izzy's wife, who I knew fairly well, but I was much friendlier with her younger sister, Temmy. Well, anyway, Sylvia said, "Oh, we got this really nice guy coming in." Where's Wendy? She's recording this.
I'm filming it with
That's
my
her-
phone. That's me
It's
over
her
there.
cell phone she's recording. Oh, I see. Okay. We got this really nice guy coming in from Boston for the weekend, which happened to be Memorial Day. And I said, "No, thank you. I've had enough of blind dates, and a lot of them were pretty bad." And they kept insisting, "Oh, but he's really nice." Okay. Anyway, he came, and we went out to this very nice restaurant in Shrewsbury. with, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 other couples. They were all married. They were all talking about their babies and the dishes and the diapers. And so after we had this nice meal, Daddy said to me, let's get out of here. And behind the restaurant was a miniature golf course. And we played miniature golf and had a really nice time. And then Dad said, the telephone.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was born on Brunswick Street in Roxbury, Massachusetts, which was mostly a Jewish neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in an apartment building that had 8 entries, and we was on the 3rd floor in one of those entries. My grandfather owned the building, so I don't know if we ever paid rent or not. I don't know. But there was 5 kids all together. I was the oldest, and we came in the sequence of myself, my sister Marcia, then my brother Richard.
No, Richard was
I'm
the
sorry,
youngest.
no.
Jay.
My brother Jay, his name was actually Irwin, but he called himself Jay. And then Edna May, who was a very lovely, lovely girl. And then Richard, who was the youngest of them all.
Mm-hmm.
So it was boy, girl, boy, girl, boy.
Mm.
All spaced about 2 years apart. My father worked in the Boston Produce Market in his grandfather and uncle's establishment called Carr Brothers. They became very wealthy in time, and we had no problems money-wise. My father's family was very austere, not any real feelings and those closeness. They were very solitary people. Some of my cousins I never even met. On my mother's side, although her family came from New York, originally was born in New York in, I forget the name of the town. Maybe it'll come back to me later. But she was born in Boston. Her family was very, very poor, and they didn't get together too much either, simply because they didn't have the means to do it. I went to school on Quincy E. Dickerman School, and then went to another school, the Christopher Gibson School, and from there I went on to Boston Latin School. One funny thing is that in Christopher Gibson School, I had one of the same teachers that my father had. And in Boston Latin School, I had another teacher that my father had. And I approached this fellow. He had a PhD, so we called him Doctor. His name was Dr. Cadigan. And I asked him, do you remember my father? You had him when he was gone to English school, English High. And the doctor looked at me and said, what's wrong with him? Does he need a job?
Okay, I'm going to stop it here for a minute, just because I don't want.
Financial problems, and then I quit to go to work and help the family.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved to Malden, Massachusetts, which is a small town right outside of Boston. And that's where, from there, I went into the Army. I had several different jobs. I worked in a plant that was making pyrotechnics powder out of magnesium bars, and I was in charge of a shift there from 11 to 6 every day. And that's where I went into the Army from there. I did get one postponement because they couldn't replace me at this munition plant for a while. But then I got kind of fed up and went into the Army.
I didn't know that.
A village, a little town of about 1,500 people, were named Hinesville. And those people there were still fighting the Civil War.
Yeah.
Most of our guys came from New England, the Midwest, up in Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and a smattering of them came from Florida. So they didn't, those people in Hinesville were not very pleasant, and we were restricted for about 4 or 5 months before we could go, what's happening to you people? I can't see you.
Oh, we're here.
So we were restricted, and, you know, I never smoked, and they never drank, actually. And then when they let us out, one night, we went down to Hinesville. Well, we just go to PX and drink beer, but the beer was so watered, it was so 2.5 something. It was very, very mild. And there were so many soldiers there and so few beer that you had to get in line. You had to get in line to get your beer. So, and once you got there, you bought about 3 or 4 of them, or 5, and then you brought them back to your table with your buddies. Well, there you got your beer there, and when you go to drink beer, then you have to go to the latrine. So now you leave your beer there. How can you protect it?
Right.
Shall I tell you how you do it?
Sure.
You drink it.
You pee in it.
No, you spit in each one of your own.
Oh my God.
You know, self-preservation.
It probably tasted better that way.
Yeah. So anyway, once we got out of town, I come back and I was feeling pretty good. I mean, I wasn't used to drinking. Now, visualize this. Take a table and an oblong table like we have in our kitchen, or this one I'm sitting at, and you cut it in 4 quarters.
Uh-huh.
And each of the quarters has a battery, like A, B, C, and D.
Uh-huh.
And the latrines were in the middle of them. Everybody's latrines were backed up against each other.
Uh-huh.
So, and they had just the pipes would go, instead of having pipes to each individual battery, they went to this, where the latrines came together. And they used to have, when you go in, you lose all propriety of privacy, or, you know, there's just a row of toilets, no partitions.
Uh-huh.
And the urinal is not a urinal, it's just a trough.
Uh-huh.
And then they have same thing with the sinks where you can wash your clothes in, because you used to have to have clean uniform sometime twice a day. It was so hot and grimy there. So we went into the wrong, me and another guy, we went into the wrong, we got turned around and went into the wrong train. So where our urinal trough was,
Uh-huh.
this guy, we thought he was washing his stuff in the urinal. I won't go any further. So, and, okay, so then we left Camp Pickett, and we went to, we went up to, we left and went up to Camp Pickett,
Mm-hmm.
which was in Virginia. That was a staging place where we got all the equipment and everything. Oh, by the way, in order to qualify, the Inspector General comes to see you perform, and you have to do so much physical stuff, so much record and firing and accuracy before they say you're combat ready. And there's one incident, I don't know if did I ever tell you the time? Maybe I did. And this camp was so large, so big that the civilians were allowed to use certain roads there to get about. It's like Camp Devens up near Route 2, It's on both sides of the highway there.
Yeah.
So this was something like that too, but it was out in the boondocks, as I said.
Mm-hmm.
But in incidences where they have live firing or firing for record, they have to close some of the roads to civilians because it could be dangerous for them
Mm-hmm.
for certain hours of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I got the detail to take care of an intersection there
Mm-hmm.
and stop them. So a car comes along and I stop them and I say, sir, there's live firing. You'll have to be here for about 15, 20 minutes before you can get the all clear signal. And he says, oh, okay, I know, we've done this before. Then another car pulls up behind him, and I go up to tell the driver, the second guy, the same thing. I turn around to come back to my post at the crossroad, and the trunk of the first car is open, and there's a black lady sitting there in the trunk. And I said, oh. So I said to the drivers that went by, I said, you know you got a passenger back there? And he said, oh yeah, I know, that's our nanny for the kids and our cook.
Uh-huh.
And he wouldn't drive. Now think of it this way here. Here's a woman, comes into his house,
Yeah.
takes care of his children,
Yeah.
prepares his food,
Yeah.
and yet wouldn't even let us stay in the same car with him.
Right.
That was so horrible to me.
Right.
Oh, it was terrible. Anyway, we went up to Camp Pickett. And there we got all new equipment, almost all brand new, because it was easier for them to take away, like for instance, I had a pair of boots that had about maybe 2 or 3 weeks on them perfectly good, but they made me change everything because the U-boats and trying to supply the stuff overseas. It would be better just to take the stuff and try to salvage it or throw it away than take, and that's what they did with a lot of the stuff. Oh, by the way, when I was there, my friend Walt Fogel,
Yeah.
he was at Newport News, I think it was. He was training, and I went down to meet him there, and all the Navy suntans were just almost the same as the Army, the commissioned officers, as the Army privates were.
Mm-hmm.
So they pinned a couple of bars on me.
Couple of what?
Bars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If I was ever found out, I probably would have been shot or something.
Court martial.
Anyway, we came up to the Cape and stayed on Miles Standish. That was a holding camp on the Cape until they were forming a convoy to go over to England. And then we went on, we got up to the Charlestown Navy Yard and we boarded this ship. And, and we went aboard that thing, and then the thing was sealed. Once you got on there, nobody got off. Except me. I was corporal at the time, and I was in charge of the detail of getting the trash off and just putting it down on a pier. But there was a gate right there. I could have got on a gate, walked over to City Square, and for a dime, I would have been home. And my folks, they didn't know where I was, So anyway, we got on the ship and we carried everything we owned right on our backs, and including our rifles. When we got off, we could hardly drag that thing on. That was a very arduous trip. It was called the USS, oh my goodness, don't tell me I'm going to forget the name, Uruguay. And it had been one of those pleasure trips that goes down to the Caribbean. And what they did is that they, anything below decks, they took out all the staterooms and everything, and they put bunks, 7 high, on the bulkheads, and they covered over the swimming pool and put up benches that were about almost as high as, a little bit higher than your waist, and that's where you ate, and you ate standing up, facing another guy in the other room.
Oh my God.
And you got 2 meals a day. And when you got through with the first one, it was almost time to get the second one. The worst part of everything there, well, there were 2 bad things. One thing was that we didn't have any fresh water. The only thing you could have fresh water was for the drink and do your teeth. Everything else, if you wanted to shower or what, was salt water. The other thing is, this is kind of odd, Ron. It was an Army ship, but they had 2 cannons on there, one fore and one aft, and they had Navy crews on those. And so us being artillery, we were the backup for them. So we would just, we didn't participate, but we just had to watch as they were practicing. And they were so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know what. When I tell you the truth, it's, they put a shell in and close the breech and lock it. Well, one of the guys had his tail shirt, his shirt of his tail
Oh, geez.
caught in with the shell. Another one dropped the shell on the deck. They were terrible.
Huh.
Anyway, it took us about 14 days to get across. It was a tremendous convoy, and you could only go as fast as the slowest ship. And those were the oilers. They were behind us. So and we were zigzagging, so it took a long time. When we got there to Liverpool, that's when we felt it, no exercise,
Mm-hmm.
2 meals a day.
Mm-hmm.
We could hardly drag those.
Mm.
We could hardly drag those barracks bags off on our shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Were you?
Then we went to the Midlands. That's
So wait, why were you zigzagging?
because of enemy subs.
So if
As a
you,
matter of fact, we had one of our reunions. One thing they told us, and I never knew before, that we did have submarine contact. We got to the Midlands around Stoke-on-Trent, Hadley, and that's the industrial Midlands. So, and they had a camp for us on some lord or duke's estate. And when the army moves, you're quarantined just like we are now for a week.
Mhm.
And but the thing is that it didn't take more than a half a day, and there were more people coming into that, the girls mostly, coming into the, and they were just, those people were so resolute and so brave and so stoic, and they take so much. People don't realize here what they were like. So they really, and their men were not, they were scattered all over the world, either captured or dead, and they were just looking for some companionship, little tenderness and love. And they were really nice people. They just didn't. I remember the first time I went on leave, I met up with a girl in a pub, and she had a uniform on, and it said ATS. And I said, what does ATS mean? And she says, oh, that means anytime, soldier. But actually, it was agricultural territorial service. They were cultivating and growing crops and things like that to help the food program there. And all through the Midlands, you have no supply. You have no idea how much supplies were being brought in and lined up, row after row after row for miles and miles, and everything. That's why That's why they designated Omaha Beach and those beaches there to become the landing point. They knew that it was going to be a difficult thing to do,
But the reason they took that place is that because there was Le Havre and Cherbourg were on the extreme ends of that stretch of water. And they knew they were going to have to supply more than 1 million soldiers, the Canadians, the Free French, everybody else. And they had to have ports to do it. That's why they picked those two places, hoping to be able to do. And that's why I ended up in Le Havre. After we got there, we set up our guns. The first night we were there, we shot down, it was a mosquito. Do you know what a mosquito is, Ron?
Yeah, a little insect.
Huh?
Yes, it was a fighter plane, right?
No, it wasn't. It was a bomber made from wood. It was a bomber made from wood, and it carried just one bomb, 1,000-pound bomb. And we had over the beachhead from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. It was a no-fly zone. There was no any plane above that stretch of beach was an enemy plane, regardless. And this guy was coming back from a raid someplace, and he took some flack, and he was coming back by dead reckoning, going back to England by the stars or how, and he came right over the beachhead and knocked him down. They tell us that he ditched and he parachuted to safety. You never know. You don't know those things.
So it was an English plane?
Yeah.
Oh.
Honey, you'd be surprised how much mistakes they were made. And Normandy, it was the weirdest place. It was like out of the Middle Ages. The people there were so primitive. We were set up. First of all, you've heard of these hedgerows, and what they were was that these people had cultivated their land, their fields, for 1,000 years. And this was the debris that came up all those years, and they just piled up around the edges of a lot of these fields, and it solidified. And some of them were 10, 12 feet high and that much thick. And that was terrible. And it was very, very bad for tanks, because tanks could go up over them, but the tank, we were supposed to be the anti-tank too. We took that, but that was a joke, because our 40 millimeters would bounce off the tank like a ping pong ball. The only time you ever had luck with it, if you hit a tread or somebody was going. When they went up over these embankments, these hedgerows, the belly of the tank would be exposed, and that in the back of the tank, where the radiators were and the motors, were the only vulnerable parts there were. But these people were so primitive. they live like they did 1,000 years ago, and it's so much different than the sophisticated other parts of France.
Right.
It was. I remember we were on this one particular farm, and we'd be moving all the time, but they had a couple of donkeys there as draft animals, and those poor donkeys, their feet, they never were trimmed, their hooves were never trimmed. So their feet were bowed, and you see pictures of people like Persian people with high pointed shoes.
Yeah.
On a bow. Well, they did that, and their legs, the back of their legs were almost like a semicircle.
Huh.
They must have been in awful pain.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
So when they had the police breakthrough, and they took the Germans, pushed the Germans back, there was no need to having anti-aircraft there. We didn't go forward with them. We went backward. Went black again.
Yeah.
Now it's
All set.
we went to Le Havre. Now that was not very good duty. We were out on the docks. The Germans had devastated that place so much they just smashed everything. Even the electricity was no good there. And we're in the docks, and we were supposed to defend those things because they thought they could get the ships in there to unload, but that never happened. The only ships that ever came there to unload were transports, with troops coming in. But for supplies and stuff, it was still coming over the beaches. And so that was our duty, to wait there and protect what was supposed to be. Well, when I say it was terrible duty, because the place was smelly, there were still bodies, and the Germans had executed people coming up out of the water. And it was the first time we were having warm food. There's 16 men to a gun crew. And and we had these Coleman stoves, and we had these rations that were made just for people like us who were not on the move, but were in defensive positions. They call them 10-to-1 rations, and they were whole dinners. And you had to make them yourself, and you still used your mess kits and stuff. Didn't have, of course. So this is where I got in trouble. We heard through the grapevine, we never saw another gun crew until after the war. When we got together, we were strung out for miles and miles, and we had communications with. We had telephones. We had a communications section, and we had walkie-talkies, so we could talk to each other, but we didn't see anybody. But anyway, we found out through the grapevine that our headquarters offices, they had taken over a French mansion in the city, and they had French people working for them. They were paying them from Uncle Sam. And here we are out in the docks there, making our own meals. So this lieutenant came down, Lieutenant D'Angelo, and we took turns cooking and cleaning up, and it was a miserable job. And anyway, he come up to me and said, "Cop," he said, "what do you do after every meal?" And, the answer was he was back in college in his ROTC book saying, well, you're supposed to clean up the dishes and make everything sanitary. And of course, I gave you the answer I told you all before. I told them I went and found a place and made a good PM. I didn't use that expression. And it wasn't so bad, but all the guys, the whole gun crew were laughing.
Yeah.
They laughed. So.
You were a real wise guy.
Yeah. So, I wasn't with that skunk crew anymore.
Yeah.
And I lost my stripes.
Uh-huh.
And I was a private.
Uh-huh.
I went from Gun Crew 2 to Gun Crew 7.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. And when I got to Gun Crew 7, they finally decided that there was not going to be any troops, excuse me. They finally decided that there wasn't going to be any raids on there, or no transporting of goods and munitions and all that. So we moved up the Seine River to Rouen. And in Rouen, there was a strategic bridge there that we had destroyed, and the engineers had built a temporary bridge, and that's what we were guarding. And we stayed there for a while, and then they decided, well, that's not going to happen. The Germans are not going to send planes over here. So then we went up a little further up the Seine River, and we became part of the 3rd Air Force. The 3rd Air Force was pursuit planes, fighter planes, light planes. See, up to now, the people don't realize, but we lost over 60,000 bombers and airplanes in World War II, and just over in the ETO. That's the European theater of operation.
Right.
So, and the reason they did that, they couldn't get the bombers can't get any protection from the German fighter planes, the Messerschmitts and the Stukas and things like that. So they were making airstrips every time we got some land further inland. They would put airstrips in there for the fighter planes to accompany the bombers over going into further on into Germany. And then, like something else, somebody had the idea of putting tanks on the fighters. These tanks had outside tanks and they had an extra gasoline, and then when they were used up, they could drop those tanks, and then go back to their own internal tanks, and that helped a lot. So then they decided after about we were into Belgium then. They decided that they don't need us anymore. I told you, after we never had a fire or shot after we left the
first.
Omaha Beach area.
Yeah.
So what happened now? We had these trucks, so now we became part of the Red Ball Express. So we go back to the coast and load up stuff and bring it up front to the lines. And again, that was kind of weird because we had to have blackout requirements. In other words, they taped the headlights on the trucks, and you had to look, and they had just a pinpoint of red on the truck in front of you. And there was a lot of trucks that went off the road and got smashed up. And the waste is terrible. And so that's where I spent most of the time. Then when finally the thing was over, and we after a while we were eligible to go home. We were near Rennes at that time, Rennes, France, and we were on a troop train, and we were going, and all of a sudden it stopped. We got out, and they gave us our rifles back, and formed ranks, walked in there, and there was this tremendous prison camp with all kinds of German prisoners, DPs, displaced persons, Russians, all kinds of different there. And we had to take over that. We weren't trained to we weren't trained to process these people or interrogate them or something, but we were trained enough to guard them, because the French who were there were just shooting into them and murdering them. So we took over there, and we were there for about 5 or 6 weeks, I think. Just in time, maybe that was just in time for a MP company to come take over. But that was quite an experience, because first of all, when you see these prison camps, nobody's allowed to bring a firearm inside the camp itself. That was a no-no. And they were only allowed to come so close to the wire. They couldn't come any closer, as you know. But I took one side trip. They took all the some officers and SS men, and we put them in a train, and we took them. I don't know exactly where we took them, but it was into Germany, someplace. And what we did is there was 7 or 8, maybe 10 boxcars, and we crowded them in there, and then we wired them shut. They were open maybe 6 or 8 inches, And if we had to stop, and we were right behind the engine and right at the end of it, and we had the doors open, and we could look along the sides of the train.
Mm-hmm.
And if the train stopped, we had to jump off and patrol
Mm-hmm.
alongside the train.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back. But some of those people are so, it was terrible. For instance, they had quite a few Russians. And the Russians had been prisoners of the Germans, and the Germans put them in their army, and they had no place to go. They had nothing to eat, so they were just Russian soldiers in the German army.
Mm.
So we were processing them, and some, I forget the name of the outfit, was overseeing the whole thing, and we give them 2 meals a day, and the food was good. They got good food, but they had to run through these places, and they had other prisoners feeding them. They had, in fact, the prisoners were running the kitchen. They have these dippers, ladles, and as they went through it, they just slopped the whole stuff on their plate.
Yeah.
Whatever it was just one slop of stuff. And when they were going to send these people back, like the Russians, they tried to divest them of anything that they had that would never tell it. When they got back there, that they had been with the Germans, and they were so stupid, some of them, they would resist it, because they got back there, they probably got shot anyway.
Yeah.
So then we went back to the Havre. And we were up there in we're up there in the cigarette camps, they called them. They had Camp Lucky Strike, Camp Camel.
Huh.
We were in Camp Herbert Tarrington. Yeah, that's probably a brand you never even heard of.
No, I don't think I have.
And then we just hung around there till our ship came. And then it was one of the worst things that ever happened to us. This was up in the cliffs behind the city. And so we loaded up our stuff on a truck. When I say stuff, it was just our clothing and our blankets. And nothing military, just personal stuff. I could down there. And I don't know what happened to the truck, but one of the guys was in an accident and died.
Oh.
His name was Frank Barraza. He was on my original gun crew.
Mm.
He was a power plant. He was a power plant operator. We had these gasoline power plants to supply electricity to the gun. I mean, I told you some of it was done by by the rangefinder,
Yeah.
which was electronic.
Mm.
So this kid got killed here
Right before you were coming home, huh?
just as we were coming home.
Yeah.
Powerful thing. And then we came home. It took us about, I think, 5 or 6 days. We were on a Liberty ship. The sea scamp came back, landed in New York. They brought us back to New Jersey there, camp or whatever it is. It's still there. Yeah. And then first night out, let's go out and see what the United States looks like. So we went out and we came back, and the guy says, "Where's your? You can't get in unless you have a pass." So, what are you talking about? We just came home. We had no pass. He said, "You can't come in." And he said, "I'll tell you what, though. Go down the fence for a while. About 50 yards down, there's a hole. That's where everybody."
That's the army.
Yeah, he was. There's one incident I didn't tell you about. When we went over from England to France, we were on a British ship, and it was a terrible ship. We came there, we put our packs and our rifles on the deck.
Uh-huh.
And then we went down where they had cots and bunks and stuff. And they got us up at 4 o'clock the next morning. And they gave us fish and peas for breakfast.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, none of us ate it. Some of us were seasick anyway, or going to be seasick.
Yeah.
And then we went out, and then we stopped, and we went down the nets into these little assault boats, and then we went into Omaha Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And we made our way up to the cliffs, and there's waited for our guns there.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks later, we decided it was time to cut each other's hair. So, did I ever tell you this?
No.
Just about. And anyway, we started giving him, every one of us had headlights.
Yeah.
I told you the story?
Well, go ahead. No, it's. I'm hoping to record it, so let's see.
Okay, anyway, so we called the medics, our medics,
Mm-hmm.
over, and he was, first of all, he was pretty high on Calvados. Anyway,
Tell me what Calvados is.
well, I know Calvados is the liquor they had, natives had there in that part of France.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it was distilled cider, and it was so powerful, we used it in our cigarette lighters. And so we said, I don't know what to do. So we decided there's only one thing to do, so we all shaved our heads.
Mm.
And it was the funniest sensation because, you know, they have a helmet liner. And in the helmet liner, you have the first thing you learn is to have an adequate supply of toilet paper in your helmet liner. But anyway,
We need that now.
this helmet liner with the iron helmet, you look forward, and if you turn your head and look one side or the other, your head moves, but the helmet doesn't. So you're looking at something altogether different. So that was it. Came home and started back to work.
Thank God you came home, Dad.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Well.
So It was an experience.
It was.
You have an amazing memory. I can't believe you can recall all that, all those details.
Well, you know, Ron, you live those things, and it's you might forget a name or you might forget a term, but you know, it really made I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but things like that you do.
Well, it made
What's that, honey?
it was a part of your life. I mean, it was such a part of your life.
Yeah. Oh, one other little incident we had after the armistice was when we were kicking around for a while. We didn't have as many points as some of the other guys had. You know, you had points to get home with, and when your points came in, see, none of the troops that I know of went home as units, unless they were going to go to the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So while you were hanging around, we had these movies that they set up in the fields, and you still had your gun crew there, but they let 2 or 3 people go a night to see a movie, and every time it was my fault, my side, I saw, this is not an exaggeration, I saw Hail the Conquering Hero 7 times.
Maybe that is the only movie they had.
And, another thing I didn't tell you was that I did get 2 combat furloughs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first one I got was Switzerland. I went to Switzerland, and that was a great place. I love that place. And when you go, they strip you down, and you get all new clothes and everything.
Hmm.
And when I came back there, I had these new pants that I had. And one of the officers says, "Where'd you get those pants?" I said, "The supply sergeant gave them to me there at the when I went on the furlough." He says, "Well, take them off, and I'm going to check it out, because they look just like officers' pants." And then I got my pants back, because that was a new issue. But I mean, that's how some people think it was so important.
Yeah.
You know?
Huh.
And the other place I went to was, I was signed up to go to Scotland.
Oh.
And but anybody going on furlough in England had to go to London first.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in London and met up with a bunch of guys. I never got out of the city.
How long were you there? How long are these furloughs?
There were seven days, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was in Window, I was in Davos. I started in Bern, then went to Davos, but Davos is a mountain there, and they had Davos, then they had Davos, oh my goodness, I can't remember, but there were 3 Davoses, one at the base, one halfway up the mountain, and the last one was Davos Dorf.
Mm-hmm.
That was the little village right at the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And the people there, you know, they were so wonderful. They, you know, they couldn't do enough for you. Of course, you know, it was their business, like it is around here now, was ruined because it was all tourism, you know.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
so I think.
Well,
I
that's.
think I've done about all I can do.
No, that is remarkable. That is remarkable. And it's Memorial Day, and so, again, let us say thank you for what you did. Thank you.
Well,
Yep. Amazing story.
Wendy?
Yeah.
okay. Here, now I'm going to introduce you to the meanest first sergeant I've ever met.
Okay. I don't record this.
Okay.
I got some more paperwork that is Mimi and I, let's see, I must have been maybe maybe about 9 or 10, and Mimi was a couple years younger, and we, that was when we lived on Linwood Street, not in the Jewish neighborhood, and the Girls Club was just kind of around the corner, and they had a dress up your doll carriage day. Well, of course, we didn't have any dolls and carriages. Well, maybe we had some kind of a doll. We certainly didn't have doll carriages. So we went to the Girls Club to watch the parade and didn't tell my mother. We just went. My mother realizes we're missing and calls my dad at work, which is on a Saturday, which was always a very busy day in the grocery stores because people generally got paid Friday night and they shopped Saturday. So my father panicked, old story, had to shut his store and went looking for us. For some reason, he went to George Street. I think I must have told you this over the years. We had some friends or family or something that lived on George Street, which is the steepest hill in Worcester. And a black gentleman many years ago was the first one to climb up the hill on his bicycle. And they have contests every now and then. His name was Major Taylor, and so Major Taylor Boulevard in Worcester is named after him. Well, at any rate, of course we weren't there. We were only around the corner. That next day, Sunday, Grandma Siegel's mother, Grandma Silver, came to visit, and my dad gave Mimi and me a spanking, and Grandma Silver was saying, Morris, don't do that, stop, and he gave us a spanking just for doing what little kids 8 and 9 years old do. They saw a carriage parade, and we didn't have carriages. Anyway, that's a little incident of how different things were back in our day.
Well, I didn't know he had to shut the store to go look for you. I didn't know that part of it. And all the times I've heard this, I never knew he had to close the store to go looking for you.
Yeah, that's true.
And he hit you with a belt, didn't he? With a strap?
Yes, he did. Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
Today, they would put somebody in jail
Yeah.
for child abuse.
Yeah.
It's just another example of just how different things are today.
Yeah.
After this virus is over, things are going to be ever so different. From I remember thinking a telephone was so amazing.
Yeah, you're right. It's really going to change everything. When you said Grandma Silver, this is Lillian's mother. I thought her maiden name was Passman.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. So Passman was not her maiden name, her first marriage name. And her husband died when Grandma was very young. Grandma Siegel was very young. Sometimes Grandma Siegel said that her dad died when she was 1 year old. Sometimes she would say she was 3 years old. But I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Grandma Passman's second marriage was Silver.
Oh.
But we will refer to her as Grandma Passman.
Yeah. What was her first name? Sarah?
No. Lashe.
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 Yeah.
And that's who Larry Bernstein is named after.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you want a little bit from your dad?
Yeah, I'm going to break it for a minute.
There was a park there, a community park, run by the city. And after school, the guys would just gather there and play football. One guy had a helmet, another guy had a pair of cleats. Nobody had a full uniform at all. And it was really, come to think of it, it was really dangerous. No one really ever got hurt. So, but getting back to stories like Mother just told us, my family was altogether different. None of us 5 kids ever went out together, either when we were small or even teenagers. We had our own different associates that we palled around with. And my dad, my father, was a market man, as I told you. And he was on call, worked all kinds of hours. He used to go up to Maine. The Coppers had a potato farm up there. I'll tell you a little story about that potato farm. I think I told you about the bull.
Yes, you told me, yes.
Well, there's no sense repeating that.
Well, but I don't have it on tape.
Yeah, tell it for posterity.
Oh, no, that wasn't his name at all. Anyway, they decided Maine is a hard place to cultivate because it's very rocky soil. They don't have the big, extensive fields like they have in the Midwest and the western end of our country. And so, and the soil is not, it's not good for many other things other than potatoes. So they decided that they're going to raise cattle. Of course, if they got cattle there, they had to have a bull. So they paid a lot of money for a bull. I don't know how much, maybe $5,000–10,000. Of course, that was many years ago. And when they got the bull up there, the bull tried to escape and jump over a stone wall, and he broke a leg or two, and they had to shoot him. And they were stuck with stakes that cost them about $40 a pound. And a bull is not good to eat, so they were, even at that, they were tough. But getting back to the kids and my family and my dad, he put in so many hours and was away so long that we never really had much companionship with him. I can remember going to different places at different times, but not really very often. And we used to get ready to go someplace in the car, and he be up sleeping, and it would take him a long time to get over his sleepiness and come and chauffeur us around or take us someplace. One thing I remember that though, electrified pumps like they have now, they had some fellow pumping by hand, and every time there was a gallon delivered to your car, there was a little ping.
Get your fingers out of the look. You're blocking your beautiful face.
Anyway, every time it would register with a ping. No voice. So nobody could say anything because he would count the pings and he could get so many pings for $1. And a ping was the price was 8 gallons for $1.
It's like 10 cents a gallon.
You're doing it again. Get your fingers out of the way.
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, I think it's this little red dot here.
No, that's...
Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, then don't do that.
Well, I didn't know. Anyway, so as having friends, we had different friends, and it was a much different atmosphere than what Esther had, because we sort of roved in gangs, 8 or 10 guys, and it was maybe 4 or 5 years different from the oldest to the youngest, so there was a pecking order there, and we did all kinds of things. We'd go to the beaches, probably take subways. Yeah.
You go to the movies too. I know you went to the movies.
What's that, dear?
To the movies. You used to go to the movies. The moving pictures.
Movies.
Oh, the movies, yeah. Yeah, well, everybody knows the movies were then 2 pictures, newsreel, coming attraction, cereal, all for a dime.
Was that like a whole Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, you go there, go into the movie about 12 o'clock and get out about 5. So, as I said, things were a lot different then.
Oh yeah.
One thing I meant to tell you when I was telling you about my service, my friend Mort Walfogel.
Yes.
He went in the Navy from the Harvard ROTC, and he was.
Explain what ROTC.
Oh no, I know what that is.
Okay.
And he was stationed in Newport, somewhere near Virginia, and I was stationed in Virginia, and we got together, and I went into the Navy Yard there, but of course I wasn't an enlisted person, and he and his friends were commissioned officers. But it so happens that the Army suntans were almost the same as the Navy uniform. So they pinned some bars on me, and I became an officer for a day or 2. Went to the officers' club. They had admirals there and commanders and me.
Dad, you could have got arrested for impersonating an officer.
Yes, of course.
If Daddy told you some of the other things he did in the service, that wouldn't have been the worst.
Oh, you want to tell me the worst besides the one that said that meant anytime soldier?
Well,
Hey Ron, can you turn that down?
I'll tell you one thing. we had our guns strung out in Normandy, and we had communications through walkie-talkies, and they laid telephone lines there. And from the time we got on the beach, got to our, and then went into our gun positions, never saw an officer. Never. They'd always talk to us over the telephone or the walkie-talkie. And then when they had the breakthrough, Normandy and the United States broke through the German lines, we didn't go forward, we went back.
Excuse me, hang on a minute. Okay, go ahead.
We went back and we went to Le Havre, which is the biggest seaport that France has, and we were there to protect the port from German planes, because that's even almost the end of the war. Most of the stuff was coming in over the beaches because the Germans had devastated the harbor so much. So when we got there, it was an awful mess. There were still bodies in the water. It was just terrible. And we found out that the officers and headquarters were in some chalet or something up on the cliffs, and they had French civilians working for them, and we're down there in the docks. And at that point, we had our own stoves, and we were making our own mess from rations that they sent down to us. So one day, the second lieutenant came, and it was my day to try to do the cooking. And he said to me, you know, he says, now what do you do after every meal? And he was expecting me to say, oh, we clean the pots and pans and clean the stoves, and you know. And you got to remember too that we still had our guns and we're on the alert all the time. But we never fired a shot after we got out of Normandy, never. Because the German army didn't exist, the German Air Force didn't exist anymore. So I said to him, well, I go over there behind the house here and I take a crap. You know, and it wasn't me so bad, but the whole gun crew that was there, there were 14 of us in the gun crew. And they started to laugh, and he got red in the face, and he muttered something, and he jumped in his Jeep, and he went back to the CP. And about 10 minutes later, the captain called me, and he said, cop? Yes, sir. Look.
I got it.
I said, yes, sir. He said, get your gear together. Don't forget your rifle. And you're going to go to gun crew 7. My gun crew was 2. And he said, on your way over there, if you have nothing else to do, take your stripes off and throw them away. Because right now, you're back to being a private.
Oh no! What were you at that point?
I was acting sergeant.
Oh.
I was still a corporal officially,
But
I was the acting sergeant.
Oh.
So
Did you go over to number 7?
I went went to number 7, and afterwards I became a PFC. That's when I came out of PFC, and we kept going forward, and our job was to protect the fighter planes. See, the bombers always came from England, but the fighter planes, to protect the bombers, always got further and further inland so they could have more time to protect the bombers, because it was a long trip for the bombers. But every time they moved up, we had to move around the air bases. But no, we never saw another German plane. So then they decided that we were obsolete.
Mm.
So what we did, we joined the Red Ball Express, and we did guard duty at prison camps. And some of the duty we did was much rougher than what we were doing before then.
You were watching German soldiers, right?
We were watching German soldiers and processing too, help processing them, because we had all kinds of people displaced, all men, no women. There, we had a camp there, about 50,000 guys in there, and so we processed them. A lot of them were Russians, and they're going to send them back to Russia, but they had to make sure that they didn't have any German medals on them or anything else, because they get back to Russia, they would shoot them.
Yeah.
And you couldn't tell them, they were so dumb. A lot of the Russians fought for the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
It was just to be able to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Where was that, Dad? Still in France, or were you on the trains moving them?
well, I was on a train once that went into Germany. We didn't process any SS or German regular. We sent them back to Germany. So, but we would take them up by train, and what we would do was put them in these box cars with some food and wire the doors shut. They could only get just about 3 or 4 inches, and we had 2 trains, 2 cars, one up by the engine and one in the back, and that's where the Americans stayed, and we were able to watch the train out the door, on the sides of the train, and if the train stopped, we had to jump out, and take positions on the outside of each train to make sure they didn't try to escape.
Just like you see in the movies, huh?
Just about, it really.
Yeah.
The only thing in the movies that is no one was allowed to bring a loaded weapon or any weapon inside the wires.
Hmm.
The Americans, because they wouldn't want to be overpowered and have the prisoner get a gun or something.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
then when we took these prisoners out on work details, the officer at the prison gate would count them, and he would tell you, you got 82 guys here, and they're going to do a day's work doing this and doing that, and when you come back, I want to see 82. I don't care if it's 8 live and 2 dead.
Yeah.
I have to have 82 back.
Yeah. Did anyone ever escape?
What's that, dear?
Did anyone ever escape?
They tried, but after the first night, they never tried it again
Should I ask why?
because a couple of them were killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, before we got there, the French were guarding them, and the French were just shooting into them, killing them.
Mm.
So that's why we took over.
Yeah.
We did that for a month or two, maybe a little longer, until they got an MP. I don't know why that's doing that.
A message came in. Okay. What is that?
Right, because you were ready to go home at that point.
We were on the way home.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were on the way home.
Yeah.
Took us off the troop train and put us there.
Yeah.
Then an MP company came, took over. Then we went home.
Yeah. Okay. So how much extra did you stay? A couple of months?
I would say 2.5 months.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you made it home.
So am I.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to break this right now. Hang on a minute. Okay, good. Okay, so you played miniature golf, and then what
Yeah.
happened?
And Dad says, do you ever get to Boston? Do you know this story? You must know this story.
But I don't have it on tape.
Yeah, I know, but for posterity. I said, yes, I do, occasionally. He said, do you have a place to stay there? I said, yes, I have a cousin. So Dad says, all right, you come out next week. Like, he's bossing me already. He's telling me, you come out next week.
That was the last time.
So I came out. I stayed with my cousin Leona. She was like a third cousin. Her last name was Schneider, and they were related to Manny Schneider, not through my mother, but through Manny's father.
Mm.
But if I go back a little further, my dad and Manny's father were cousins. My mother and Manny's mother were sisters. So if you can figure that, did you know that?
Yeah, I always wanted to know that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're at my cousin Leona Schneider's in Boston, and Daddy picks me up, and he takes me to now this is a Saturday night, mind you. He takes me to the Boston Produce Market.
On Hanover Street. That's where on Saturdays a lot of pushcart guys came with produce that they either purchased from the Boston Market terminal, or there was stuff that was not so good and they had to be sacrificed. So some of the stuff was good and some of it was not. There were virtually hundreds of them. And they lined Hanover Street all up and down there, and that's where people did their shopping for that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the street is littered with fruit that fell off the truck or off the carts, or they threw aside, or people just ate it and threw it down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like they're throwing down masks and gloves
Right.
today.
Right. Very romantic.
Yeah.
Then I'll take over.
Okay.
So then we went.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Hold on. I've said to myself, what kind of a guy is this that takes me to a place with broken watermelons in the street and rotten fruit in the street. What is this? Okay, now you can carry on.
And quite a few of these guys I knew because they worked as lumpers, unloading cars of freight cars and trucks and vans of the stuff. And we met them. They were market men too, so I knew quite a few of them. And then I decided to take Mother on a romantic cruise. I mean, you know about this.
Uh-huh.
And we went over to the public gardens, and we took the swan boat ride. And we took the deluxe cruise. and at that time, I think it was 10 cents a ticket.
Why don't you explain what the swan boats are, honey?
Well, Wendy knows that.
Yeah, but the children and grandchildren might not know.
They have a little pond there in the Boston Garden. The Boston Gardens is separated by a street from the Boston Common, although they both belong to the city. And in the gardens, they had this little pond, and they had these swan boats, and they propelled by an operator who paddled with his feet while he guided the place, and they held maybe 20 people, 15 people, and they would charge you. In those days, I think it was a dime. It might have been more, but it was a dime. And we took the deluxe cruise, which took about at least 14 minutes. And then from there, we went to the theater, right? Or do we have a bite to eat? I think.
No, I don't recall a bite to eat, but then...
No,
yeah.
we were full of fruit by then.
Yeah.
And we went to see a play, presentation of Kiss Me Kate.
Mm-hmm. Called Kiss Me Kate.
How was it?
Well, it was a very professional thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it wasn't a movie, it was live. I forget.
Oh, what happened?
No, it's fine. I got you.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We haven't got you. Anyway, it was at the Wilbur or one of those legitimate theaters. And then I think I took you back to your digs.
Yeah. Wendy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm recording it. I just put it down because I could get a better angle.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the end of the first night in Boston.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then that was Memorial Day. And then Daddy would come in weekends, late Saturday night after having worked in his father's store. And he'd stay Sunday and leave sometime late Sunday afternoon. The upshot is I really didn't know him very well. That was Memorial Day. We somehow got engaged in August, and we got married in November, so that covered 6 months. I do recall Wendy, I can't see you at all.
No, you can't see me, but I can see you.
Oh, okay, all right. So, I remember I got a phone call from your grandmother, from Nana Carp, after maybe 3 or 4 visits from Daddy. She called up to say that Daddy didn't feel well and he wouldn't be coming in this weekend to see me. And I thought that was pretty strange that he didn't call me himself, and that he had his mother calling me.
I don't remember this at
Oh,
all.
And I said to myself, well, that's that.
Yeah.
That's the end of that. If he didn't have the courage to call me first and had his mother call. I said, I'll never see him again. Well, I don't know what, Dad, I don't know why you didn't call me personally, but who cares? This is 70 years later, almost 70 years, and I forgive you.
You know, just a little addendum to this thing here.
Uh-huh.
When I introduced Esther to my folks,
Uh-huh.
Benjamin and Annette Cobb, my father, he beckoned me to his side a little bit away from the ladies and said, you know, she uses lipstick. And I said, that's not so bad, Pop. It's okay. But then we went to Slade's barbecue. That was right in the middle of the black
Area.
the black area where all the black people live. And they had what this Slade's barbecue was. It was run by black people, and it was always filled with Jews. And we had a nice meal there, and Esther didn't want the dessert. And I don't know why, she'll have to tell you that herself. But anyway, the waiter was a black waiter says to her, listen, you don't have to eat the thing, nem for the Kinder. Remember that?
I certainly do. And for you young children watching, that means take it for the children.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I never heard that story.
Really?
You know, Grandpa Carp must have thought you were some fancy lady, Ma, and he didn't know you were going to be such a hard worker. And,
Yeah,
you know,
well.
he probably thought you were a princess, huh? With
Yeah.
lipstick.
With lipstick, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was Grandpa Cop. I'm talking about Benjamin, not your children's grandfather.
Right.
Was a very quiet man. You never really knew what he was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to get closer with him. I needed a father figure because my father was gone. Well, not at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't get really close to Grandpa Carp, Grandpa Benjamin.
Yeah.
So I kind of missed that thing in my life. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let me take a break here.
I don't talk all day because I'm being censored and overrun, and I can't think of anything to talk about at night.
Well, we'll find something for you. All right, you start, Esther. We'll think about something for Dad.
Okay, so this goes way back to World War II, 1941, 42. I was working for Uncle Manny in his store. So I used to ride the same bus going to work and going home, or going to the hospital after work where I volunteered, but that's another story and another time. So I got to know the bus drivers. They were the same person coming and going. Now, this is wartime, and there were many, many shortages. Something like today, only not toilet paper, but for one thing, cigarettes. And my bus driver smoked. So I was able to get a carton of Lucky Strikes. That's what he smoked. At the time, that was $2 a carton. Today, I think it's like $10 a package, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there I got on the bus full of people, and I hand the bus driver a carton of cigarettes, not even in a paper bag, but just boldly like that. I was probably going to get killed by the rest of the passengers, and the bus driver paid me, and I paid Manny, and that's the little wartime story.
Huh.
Okay, that reminds me. First of all, Lucky Strikes used to be in a green package with a big red circle in the middle of it, and they dispensed with that, and it was just a plain little package, little pack, and they had a motto, Lucky Strike Green has gone to war.
Huh.
And when we used to buy cigarettes in the Army, especially overseas, and I think there were a nickel a pack, 50 cents, and the Germans and the French people would pay as much as $10 for them.
Huh.
And if we, this was after the hostilities were over, the GIs weren't in the fields anymore. They had barracks or took over hotels, anything like that. And of course they had chow lines. And when you were not allowed to smoke in the mess halls. So of course they would put their cigarette butts out or throw them on the ground. And the native people, especially the kids, would die for them and pick them up and use them again, or break them up for whatever tobacco was left in the cigarette paper.
Wow. That's amazing. Huh. Huh.
Okay, you have anything else to say?
No, I just...
Okay, so I have another wartime story.
Okay.
And this again is in Manny's Market. It was called the New Model Market, and for the time, it was a fairly large store. Compared to today's supermarkets, it would be nothing. As a matter of fact, the building is long gone. But at that time, that was a pretty good size market. There were many, many shortages besides the cigarettes that I mentioned. There were shortages of sugar, butter, coffee you couldn't get coffee if you paid a lot of money.
Wow.
Gas. Oh yeah, gasoline was definitely rationed. You had a little book of stamps, and every time you got so many gallons, you had to give in a stamp out of the stamp book. Okay, so meat was very, very scarce. Now, Uncle Manny had a brother-in-law who was a federal meat inspector. And evidently, through some contact he had, Manny was able to get rabbits from Louisiana. And so he ordered a freight car of rabbits. Now, don't forget that's a perishable item. You have to pay for icing the product. So they put a notice in the paper that the New Model Market had rabbit for sale. The lines were outside the door, just like today, only not separated. It was amazing. They were coming in so quickly. The cash register literally was filled with bills. And every so often when I had to go to the bathroom, I'd stuff some bills in the pocket of my uniform, go in the back room, shove the money in the safe. I had no idea how much. Go to the bathroom and come back checking people out. This went on for a few days until a meat inspector, not Manny's brother-in-law, but a meat inspector came in, took a sample, and discovered that it wasn't rabbit at all, but hare, H-A-R-E.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hare is a form of rabbit, or rabbit is a form of hare. And I mentioned to Manny the bill of lading, which is a slip you get from the railroad company to tell you what's in the carload. And I mentioned to Manny, it says hare on the bill of lading, and we also, well, a hare is a rabbit. Long story short, there was a big article in the paper about Manny trying to sell hare. Oh, wait a minute, let me go back. The meat was examined, and it was muskrat.
No.
So, oh my God, you can't imagine the big headlines in the paper, and people were bringing back the meat and throwing it on the counter and saying, "Here's your rat." It was a horrible, horrible time in his life.
Did he have to give the money back? Did he give refunds?
Oh, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. But
We'll tell the rest of the story.
oh yeah, so he's got this half-filled carload on the railroad, paying icing charges, which is now half full of what evidently is muskrat.
Mm-hmm.
So he managed to sell it to a mink farm in Vermont for something like 2 cents a pound. Evidently, minks eat muskrat. There's the telephone, but I don't think we'll answer it.
Okay.
Yes. Where is it?
Over there.
Right. Well, now I turn it. Dad, did you have something else to say about them or about anything?
Well, I think they themselves are very fortunate because they bond together so well and keep in touch so well together. Believe it or not, a lot of families don't do that. A lot of we are very fortunate in that respect.
Yes, I agree. I mean, that's the one thing technology is good for because they are spread all over the place. I'm hoping that's temporary. I'm hoping at some point somebody's closer to each other. But if it's not, they certainly manage to stay close, you know, by talking to each other.
I think they all have their own secret society, their communication.
They do.
Sure, that's a lot of stuff that we're not privy to. I don't know how much you rate with them.
Not so much. Not so much. Sometimes you know more than I do.
Well, you have to understand, you didn't tell your parents everything. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
Are you sure of that?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. When the Shaughnessy's came over with a bushel basket full of empty beer cans after one of your parties in the house.
Uh-huh. Well, that was my senior graduation party, so.
Is that an excuse or you're boasting about?
Yes, both. Both. All right, I'm going to shut it. What?
I saw something in the paper. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I saw something in the paper about a Doherty reunion from 75.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. I'll have to.
Well, I'll send it to you.
Okay, good.
Took the call, and she was overwhelmed. It was Jay.
No, first it was Hazel.
No,
No, it was Jay. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Sorry.
it was, actually his name was Irwin.
All right, well.
Irwin, and he took the name of J. Irwin.
Mm-hmm.
None of us had middle names. His name was Irwin Cobb, but he adopted the name J. Irwin.
Mm-hmm.
Something like E. Wendy.
Yeah.
And Wendy, don't go there. Don't go there, or she'll never forgive me for that.
And Hazel was not his wife at the time. He was his indoor companion. But
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah. But anyway, she turned out to be his third wife. He had two wives. He had two wives before that. We never knew anything about it.
Yeah.
So that was my family. That's
Yeah.
how we. And then we got together, and we were the best of friends. In fact, I got him into here. And he married Hazel. They stayed up near the University of Michigan. He was a Michiganer like you were.
Yeah.
And Hazel passed away, and I convinced him to come back here.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
So it was altogether a different kind of relationship. So I really can't be like Mother can and remember these wonderful family things. Well, another thing is that my mother was a very smart and a very beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother and her two daughters resented her because she married my father. She was a bookkeeper or a clerk, or she was an office worker where my father owned the coppers with his father and other cousins. So they always resented her, looked down at her, and so that affected our whole life.
I guess it did. Well, I remember Ida and Gertrude, and who was the other daughter?
Shirley.
Shirley.
And Shirley, she had red hair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother's family, a lot of redheads were, and her maiden name was Rosen.
That's Ida.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she was a very tough, really nasty old lady. She really was.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't have typical Jewish family at all.
No, not at all. And my grandfather really was a peach.
Right.
Really was.
Wait, and now he was married to Ida? William was married to Ida.
Right.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
And
Yeah.
my grandfather had 3 brothers. 2 of them I never met. They were my father's uncle and my grand-uncles. And that's how the business, that's how that family was.
Yeah.
Family. They were so, they never were able to find out where they came from exactly, or the later generations, because they could never really find what the name Cobb was. And they thought they came from, some of them came from Germany, but I'm not sure that ever was established.
Interesting. Well, maybe it was a name that was cut, abbreviated. Maybe it was Karpitsky or something. Karpowitz. Yeah, maybe it was Polish or Hungarian. Who knows? We should look into that.
Oh, no, they have very much. They never got much with it.
Yeah. Good.